Whatever you want.
Right, I'm the Arctic Taxi driver. This, my friend, is Ben Stewart, and he is the head of global communications for Greenpeace, and he's currently working on the campaign to free the Arctic 30. You may have heard about this. Is some Greenpeace activists, protesters, and journalists have been arrested in Russia. What's happened there, Ben?
So right, we had 30 people who were on the Arctic Sunrise, which is one of our ships. Last few summers, the ship's been going up to confront Arctic oil drilling, off Greenland and Alaska and places like that. And then this year it went to Russia, where Gazprom is actually trying to be the first company to extract Arctic oil and pump it back to Europe. So our guys went up there. They were bearing witness, which is a sort of core part of what we do. And they wanted to launch a protest against this huge 250,000 ton oil rig in the Russian Arctic. Two of the guys got onto the oil rig and climbed up the side and tried to hang a banner. At that point, the Coast Guard responded with speedboats, stuff like that. Shots were fired. We remained peaceful. We're always peaceful. The guys were managed. They got the guys off the rig, took them away. The Arctic Sunrise went about 3 miles away. This is all pretty standard stuff. This has happened in the Arctic before. A couple of days go forward. Special forces abseil onto the helideck of our ship, armed with guns and knives, arrest everyone, take them to Murmansk in the Arctic Circle, throw them in jail. They've been in jail for a month. They charge them with piracy. They face 15 years in jail. That was a really quick summation of what happened. We'll probably go into more detail.
Wow, that sounds very dramatic. I mean, are they? This is in the Arctic itself, where they are.
Yeah. Murmansk, where they are caught at the moment, where they're in jail, is the biggest city in the Arctic Circle. The rig was drilling in the Arctic. Arctic oil drilling offshore is a new phenomenon. They're trying to kind of go to the ends of the earth to get this oil out. We think it's very irresponsible and very dangerous. We'll talk about that a bit more later. But at the moment, we're really just concerned about our mates. There's 30 of them. They're from countries across the world. There's 6 of them are British. One of them, a very good friend of mine, Frank, works in the Greenpeace office just there. I've known him for 12 years. And they're in there at the moment, as I say, charged with piracy, and it carries a maximum of 15 years in jail. So we've got a global campaign to try to get them out.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of it on the television. So basically, this rig that they mounted had it's actually drilling for oil.
Yes, prospecting at the moment, and we think actually next year will be the first year that it actually pumps oil out and actually gets it back into Europe. But at the moment, yeah, it's drilling. So
the purpose was to highlight the I mean, if anything was to happen, apparently they can't rescue, or like what happened in Deepwater Horizon. If that blew.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, right? So people have said, "What, are you against all oil drilling?" No, we're not. We're in your cab at the moment. You're not running this thing on soy milk and flower petals, are you? So the point is, we accept that at the moment until we make that big transition to a cleaner economy. We're going to need oil, but Arctic oil is a step too far, and the reason for it is this: if you had a Deepwater Horizon style blowout in the Arctic, then within about a month of that blowout, when it still hadn't been capped, the ice would come back, because they can only drill in the summer. When the ice is back, they can't reach the blowout, so it would continue to pump oil out under the ice for months and months and months until the ice retreated 6 months later. Then you'd have to try to cap the blowout at that point. In the meantime, all that oil would have been soaked up by the ice and moved around the Arctic, and it would be extremely dangerous for wildlife. We have a situation where we looked at the Gazprom, they're the guys that run this rig, the Gazprom oil spill response plan. We got hold of it. It has no discernible plan to deal with a blowout. They just can't do it, and the reason is that it's impossible to do. You can't change the fact that ice comes back in the winter. So that's one reason why we went up there, and of course there's that wider reason as well about climate change. The only reason they can drill in that area is because the ice is melting due to climate change. They're drilling for the oil that caused the melting in the first place, and we think that's crazy.
So now we've got 30 activists, 30 protesters and journalists that have been arrested. I read a letter yesterday from Alexander.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really sad. That was quite powerful.
It was really powerful. She's works in our Australian office, although she is a Brit and she's from Devon, and she's a great person, and it's pretty heartbreaking to read that. We got the letter. yesterday afternoon. I think it was on the the afternoon before yesterday, and it was in the Guardian, front page of the Guardian, and reading it. I mean, she had a good sense of humour still. She was laughing about the fact that we heard that they didn't have good water in there, so we got them little immersion heaters so they could boil the water, so they could sterilise it. And for about 3 days, she sat there looking at this thing that we managed to get into her through the lawyers, and she thought we got them curling tongs, and she was thinking, you know, what the hell are you lot doing sending curling tongs in? And she thought that was pretty funny, but at the same time she's obviously missing her family. She's staying strong, but you know, she says she doesn't want her life to be rotting away in a Murmansk jail. And one really interesting thing that she said is, I hope the story isn't dying. And that's what we have to do, what we feel we have to do here in London, where we're running the communications for the campaign, and around the world where we're trying to push this. We don't want to let the story die.
Well, I mean, the Russians don't muck about. The pussy right. I mean, they don't let people out. They could be there. They could get their 15 years. You know that.
I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that's going to happen. Obviously, it's a worry, but
do you think they're trying to shut you down? Are they sending you a message?
I think what's happening is this: you've got Gazprom is an incredibly powerful entity in Russia. It's a state-owned company. You know, something like 30-40% of Russian exports are oil and gas. They really are a state within a state, and I think they're calling the shots here. Effectively, Gazprom, you know, are ensuring that our people stay inside because they're trying to intimidate us. And what they don't want up there, of course, is scrutiny. They want to be able to continue drilling for oil in a way that we regard as unsafe, without transparency, without anyone looking at them. So we're going up there to try to provide that transparency, and they don't like it. And I think that's why our guys are still inside.
So yesterday also I saw that your headquarters in Russia was there was some guys in black balaclavas.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, I was in the office early on Friday morning, and we got a phone call from our guys in Murmansk and said, look, you know, the grounds of the office in Murmansk have been broken into, and something that we were going to use in a protest had been stolen. Now what we had was this mock cage, and it was just going to be a protest in Murmansk where we put someone in this mock cage to kind of, you know, highlight the fact that we've still got our people in jail. But that mock cage was stolen. Then I got a phone call saying that they'd looked at the CCTV footage and they saw who'd stole them. And they were 6 guys in balaclavas, seemingly acting professionally. We caught them going in, breaking into the grounds, stealing this cage that was made of pipe cleaners and nicking it. And it was kind of odd. You know, it was just a cage made of pipe cleaners. Don't know who they were. Don't know what it means, but definitely our guys over there are under pressure, and this is a whole different gravy from other places where we've operated before.
I mean, obviously, looking at the Russians' tactics with jailing your friends, at the same time, it's not much different from here, because you were one of the King's North 6, wasn't you? What happened there?
Me and 5 others climbed the chimney at King's North Power Station. Which is in Kent, which was they were gonna invest to make a new coal-fired power station there, which would have been the first of a new generation of coal-fired power stations, which we think would have been pretty dumb when you're talking about Britain trying to lead the fight against climate change. So we climbed the chimney there, and we abseiled down the side, and we painted in water-based paint so it would disappear in the rain, but we painted Gordon Brown's name. We tried to paint a bit of a pun, which was Gordon Bin it, as in bin this new power station. But the darkness came in before we got to the bin it, so it just said Gordon down the side. Anyway, so the point was we were trying to highlight the threat the new coal-fired power stations posed to the fight against climate change. We were arrested, we were charged with criminal damage, and we argued in front of a court in Maidstone that what we did was justified because the damage to the environment from this new coal-fired power station outweighed the damage we did to the chimney. We brought in the world's leading expert on climate change, Jim Hansen, the director of NASA. He persuaded the jury that we were right, the company was wrong, and we were acquitted. And so that was a relief for us, and it was one of those kind of groundbreaking cases that other people looked at, where you could argue in front of a jury that climate change was so serious that you were justified taking direct action. Then you go forward to Russia, however, and this is a whole different thing. If I'd have been convicted, I might have done 3 or 4 months inside, and you know, I did climb that chimney. I did, but our guys are charged with piracy, and they're absolutely not pirates, and so these are trumped up charges. And I think that our guys in Russia are prisoners of conscience, quite frankly.
And I mean, there's a lot of people supporting you. You've got Nobel laureates and everyone's writing letters and thing. But you are up against what I call the war machine, which is banks, oil and arms. So it's a global thing. It's not just Russia, is it?
No, it's not. It's not. And actually, it's a really interesting point that you make there, because it's not just Russia and it's not just Gazprom. Fact is that Gazprom did a deal earlier this year with Shell, you know, a company that we're very familiar with in this country, and they have a joint venture deal to drill for oil in the Arctic. The only way that Gazprom can drill for oil in the Arctic to the extent that it wants to is because it's bringing in the expertise and finance that Shell can bring it. And therefore, I think Shell holds some responsibility for my friends being in jail. If they wanted my friends out of jail, then Shell, I think, could make it happen. They could, for example, say, we're going to pull out of this joint venture unless the Arctic 30 are freed. The fact is that all of these giant oil companies, to a certain extent, are operating together now. And so you have a sort of globalized energy industry that brings huge pressure against groups like Greenpeace, and we need people, normal people, to join us to try to push back against them. And we need people to be saying to Shell, for example, look, this won't do. You've got a service station down my road. You're trying to gain a social license to operate, to say that you work within the mainstream, but you've got into bed with gangsters like Gazprom, who've got 30 prisoners of conscience in jail in Murmansk.
I think Shell know quite a bit about gangsterism. Anyway, this I'm going to come back. We're going to have part 2 here with Ben. We're going to be talking about the war machine. No, you're brilliant. This is Ben Stewart. He is head of global communications for Greenpeace. And I'm going to ask him some questions about the war machine, about banks, oil and arms. We've just been speaking about about the Arctic 30, but at the end, I just wanted, what can people do to help your friends that are in jail?
Right. Okay. So there's a bunch of things they can do. Firstly, they can email the Russian embassy. 1.5 million people have already done that. But I think we need to go further, quite frankly, and we need pressure on Gazprom, who are effectively the people that have got our people in jail. Gazprom hold the key. They are a state-owned oil company in Russia. They're a state within a state. They're immensely powerful. If they wanted our people out, they could get them out. So, you know, Gazprom sponsors the Champions League. Gazprom sponsors lots of art events. Let's go look about how we can begin to put pressure on Gazprom and say to Gazprom, look, if this is the way you're going to operate, we don't want you in our country. And then you've got Shell that have got into bed with Gazprom. So we need to be saying to Shell, look, if you want to operate in our country and if you want to be regarded as part of the mainstream, what are you doing in bed with people like Gazprom? You know, these are the companies that effectively hold the key to the freedom of our guys. And so we need to put pressure on those companies.
So these companies, these oil companies, now the war machine, as I see it, is without widespread debt, destruction and death, the global economy will collapse because they control everything. The top 100 companies in the world are situated in this arc, in this triangular bank, oil and arms.
Yeah, well, they're also situated about 2 miles from here in the city of London.
Well, this is the city of corruption.
Yeah, well, exactly. And, you know, you have a situation at the moment where Shell, I think, are doing something similar to what they did in the 90s when they went to Nigeria and they worked with the Nigerian regime to extract oil from there at the expense of human rights. So we ended up with the Ken Saro-Wiwa situation where you had a human rights advocate that merely spoke for his people against environmental destruction was executed by that regime, and I think we all know that Shell at that moment was working closely with that regime. Now we have a situation now where our friends are being held in jail. Gazprom are the people, you know, that hold the key. You know, they're working closely with, you know, with the government in Russia, etc. I think Shell now need to be held responsible for that deal that they've signed with Gazprom.
But I mean, our government are implicated here. Our banks, our oil companies, our arms dealers, they play this thing about, okay, so in our country, we're talking about Russia, everyone's in jail. Here, you've got this freedom to express your protest. But
well,
yeah, you're going to be ignored, you're going to be infiltrated, you're going to be arrested, you're going to be dismissed.
Well, no, exactly. I was one of the people that was infiltrated by Mark Kennedy, the undercover cop, and ended up going to court on false charges there because Kennedy put us there. We got our convictions overturned in the end. But this was a guy that a bunch of us had known for 7 years, and he turned out to be an undercover cop. He was sleeping with lots of the activists, which I regard as a gross breach of their human rights. And we've seen the government, or I should say police officers, just this week saying that it's acceptable for these cops to sleep with activists. So we have a big human rights problem here, and we have a big problem of transparency here as well.
Aided and abetted by this government. It's the government that's putting the police into they don't like direct action. They don't like protest. They don't like people with tents.
Yeah, well, no, but it's not even just this government, because we have to remember, Jack Straw, when he was Home Secretary,
Not that.
Was actually, you go on. I think you want to elaborate.
Well, I think, to me personally, they're all one, and they've come out with all these government policies to do with like welfare and to do with education, and they're just assimilations. They're to everything. But what about like, would you do direct action against the Queen?
No, I wouldn't do direct action against the Queen.
But she is the head. Do you know that? You do realise that it's her Geordie Cockney army that goes to Iraq. She's the ones that she's the one that has mines in Africa. She has shares in mines in Africa.
Yeah, but
it starts with her. She's at the top.
Yeah, I think she's more just a figurehead, to be honest.
I think metaphorically we need to kill the Queen. Not metaphorically. The Queen needs to go.
I'm going to put something out there. I'm going to say assassination of the Queen is going to be counterproductive. How do you feel about that?
No, I think metaphorically, I think they need to be taken out. We have to kill the idea of monarchy, because that's the root of all problems.
Hey, look, I'm definitely a Republican, and I don't want a situation where the person who's my head of state is there because of a virtue of their birth rather than their talent. I'm just not even metaphorically. I'm just not sure we should talk about possibly assassinating the Queen.
Okay, innocent people around the world enslaved, in debt to banks. They have their land bases destroyed by mining companies. Their people killed by militias. And we've got a Queen, we've got the City of London, we've got a government that is all acting together.
City of London and government, definitely. I think the Queen's more interested in horse racing than what's going on in the City of London. She might well have some dodgy investments, and that should be brought up, as does the Church of England, my friend, as well, which definitely needs to be brought up on this kind of thing. No bigger example of hypocrisy than the Church of England moralising to us. God,
He was out today, wasn't he, talking about energy. What was the protest on the Shard about?
Protest on the Shard was about Shell and them drilling in the Arctic. So we picked the Shard because it's based on a shard of ice. So we thought that works for the Arctic. It's right in the centre of the three Shell headquarters: the global headquarters, the UK headquarters, and their trading and investment arm in Canary Wharf. So we thought we'll do the Shard. And so
it's also owned by the
Dubai.
Qatar.
It's Qatar, is it? Okay,
Qatar.
Yeah. I think you're actually right, Qatar. But that wasn't so relevant. It wasn't about that. It was directed at Shell and their Arctic drilling.
Qatar is at the head of the war machine. They carried the Qatar flag into Libya.
Did they?
Yeah. So Qatar,
they provided some F-15s to the Libyan thing, didn't they?
Yeah, but they also they're the largest exporter of our we're British gas is coming from Qatar.
Yeah, no, $4 billion.
5 year deal.
£4 billion worth of Qatari gas every year.
Goes through Centrica.
Yeah.
What about this? The big six and the prices on the energy.
It's dodgy, isn't it?
Well, dodgy. They paid $7 billion in dividends.
Yeah, no, exactly. And you've got Sam Laidlaw, who's the chief executive of Centrica, British Gas, got I think $4 million in total. Was it $2 million pay and $2 million bonus? I'm not sure. It was something like that. Yeah, look, I mean, they're fleecing us. They're absolutely fleecing us. There's no doubt about it. And if you look, when wholesale gas prices go up, the price goes up. When they stabilise, the price doesn't come down. They're making a packet out of it. And there are a lot of lies being told in the media about why bills are high. They're constantly saying it's because of green measures. If you look at it, it's because of the wholesale price of gas is going up, and the companies are not regulated.
But the wholesale price of gas isn't going up. The Centrica, who's feeding British Gas, they're the ones putting the price up. The second largest owner or buyer of gas is Deutsche Bank.
Is it?
Yeah.
Because they're trading it.
Yeah, they're trading in it, but Centrica's involved in it and they're supplying it. Centrica is working with Qatar.
Yeah.
They're partners.
Yeah, yeah. Do you know, you've got a situation in Germany, increasingly you have energy owned by local cooperatives.
Yeah.
And so their equivalent of the big six are being knocked out of the game. And this is really, really freeing up to allow people to make energy choices. And you're going to find that Germany's way ahead of us. And, our bills are going to look really inflated compared to Germany's in a short period of time.
But the war machine is interested in the means of production, so they want to start wars and they want to drill, because if it costs money, then it costs money to you. So then we have to pay. If you was, for instance, instead of spending 50 billion on HS2, imagine they invested 50 billion
on solar panels
on every single house.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you think?
Well, in the right places, yeah, but also it's not just putting solar panels on the houses now. We need to put it into research and development as well to bring the cost of solar down. Fortunately, it's collapsing, and in a relatively short period of time, solar is actually going to be cheaper than fossil fuels, and then I think we might have the energy revolution that we're looking for.
But we need to do it now. Do you know what I mean?
What
What about Fukushima?
What about Fukushima?
I've got a quote here from a sailor.
Yeah.
After we left Japan, it felt as if the ocean itself was dead. Nothing alive for over 3,000 miles. Never saw turtles, dolphins, sharks, or even a bird.
Yeah.
Saw one whale with a large tumour.
Well, I haven't seen that quote, and I think we definitely have to be careful that we don't exaggerate what happened in Fukushima, and no one needs to exaggerate it because it was really, really serious. And you've got a very big problem at the moment where all of the radioactive water that they've used to cool down the reactor is kind of in these containers around the Fukushima site, and they're running out of room about where they're going to put this water, and they're worried that it's going to start spilling into the sea. Radioactive water spilling into the sea. Now, I haven't seen that quote about the effect that it might have had on wildlife already, but sure as hell, if radioactive water starts escaping into the sea, you will have those kind of effects. So it's definitely a huge concern.
Out. Shouldn't Greenpeace be out there on the boats and that?
We're out in Fukushima.
Yeah.
We're doing radioactive testing out there because the Japanese people don't necessarily trust the government to tell the truth about what's happening there, and that's not that surprising. But Greenpeace is out there trying to get the information to the Japanese people that they need to make their own decisions.
So what about all these British companies, Glencore, Xstrata, Rio Tinto, going around killing everyone around the world for mining? Like I interviewed this guy from West Papua the other day.
Yeah.
Well, they're out of control.
They are out of control, and one of the problems is you don't have a global regulatory body. There's no way to actually bring these companies to account apart from us, and by us I mean like what some people have described as the world's second superpower, global public opinion, actually being brought to bear on them, so they can't operate like this anymore. And occasionally it happens. So if you look at what happened with Shell in Nigeria with Ken Saro-Wiwa, there was a huge global outcry, and Shell got hit for it. And for a moment, they tried to instigate, you know, some kind of workable corporate social responsibility because they were scared of us, and by us I mean all of us. But of course, you know, as soon as you lose focus and we lose interest in that kind of stuff, they're back doing dodgy stuff like getting into bed with Gazprom again. So we need to keep them.
But they're the fuckers. Shell, BP, they started wars. They kill 1 million people like that in Iraq. We're all dead.
I would. You know what? One of the most remarkable things that the people who caused the war in Iraq did was make it somehow a conspiracy theory that it was a war for oil. And so if you said it's a war for oil, you were put there in a sort of bracket with 9/11 truthers and all this kind of thing. You know, the fact is, even Alan Greenspan ended up saying eventually, yeah, of course it was a war for oil. And then about a day later, it was, oh, shit, you know, it wasn't meant to say that. But, you know, it demonstrably was. You know, and it was Dick Cheney's war, and that was a war about getting access to fossil fuel resources. And if we weren't dependent on these kind of fossil fuel resources, then they wouldn't have this kind of mandate that they think they have to go to war in Iraq and places like that.
So we have everything. We have resources, art, intelligence, love. We could be so special, but we choose the opposite.
Some of us are special. You're special.
I'm the taxi driver. This, my friend, is Ben Stewart from Greenpeace.